We also want to thank the event organizers, and we're going to have the event organizers, some who are in the event right now, just introduce themselves. And we couldn't have done it without the collaborative nature of the event. So please take a second to introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Michael Bennett, and she, her, and I work for Chioco Design in Austin, Texas. I'm an architect, and I'm part of the Austin group, clearly, and I don't know, I'm really happy to be here and happy that this is happening. So yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Daniel Confroy. I'm the marketing director at Palma. We're an architecture studio in Chicago, and we're very proud to be one of tonight's sponsors and help create more spaces where designers and architects in our community can share our stories and build a more equitable future for all of us. And I just want to personally thank all of the panelists for joining us and sharing their stories, and to everybody else joining at home. Thank you so much, and cheers if you're drinking.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Mccloud. I'm sorry, I'm in a very echoey room. I work in communications at SOM, and I'm a part of the AIA Chicago LGBTQI Alliance. Really excited to be a part of this event, and proud of my colleagues from AIA Chicago and Austin for pulling this together, and also for the panelists and everybody for joining today. This is a very kind of near initiative to my heart, and I appreciate everybody who's a part of this effort in making our industry more equitable.
Hi, I'm Jason Medina. I am a project manager at Studio Steinbomer here in Austin, Texas. I am the chair of our LGBTQI Plus Alliance committee here in Austin, and I'm super excited to finally get this organization kicked off and our first event kicked off for the year, and finally have a space for us queer folks to just hang out and be ourselves.
Am I up next?
Go ahead, Joe.
All right. Hi, I'm Joey D'Elia. I'm one of the other co-chairs along with Jason for Austin's chapter of the LGBTQIA Plus Alliance. Super excited to have everybody on board. I see my girl Lindsay from Kansas City's here. I miss you so much. And yeah, thank you all for joining in. Thank you for the Chicago groups for joining in on us. Thank you to all of our panel speakers and everything. Yeah, this is supposed to be a fun, collaborative panel discussion with everybody. Please have a drink if you want to drink. We're architects, it's kind of required. Yeah, I guess that's all for me, right?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Federoff. I'm one of the AIA Chicago LGBTQI Plus Alliance co-chairs, along with Lucas. Happy to be here. I work at EXP Architecture. We do big transportation infrastructure projects. This has been a few months in the making, so I hope you guys all enjoy it. It's going to be really fun.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Ray. Pronouns are she, her. I'm from the Chicago group, founding member of the Alliance here. I'm really excited for this panel. The last 2 years, we had a super fun, huge party in Chicago in February. So this is our alternative fun event in COVID times.
Okay, so that looks like everyone's introduced themselves that's on at the moment. I think we can really get things rolling now. My name is Lucas Goldbach. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Chicago group. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the design director at Mike Shively Architecture in Chicago. Just wanted to let you know that later on we'll be using the poll feature to get some demographic questions to everyone to answer. All the information will be anonymous. We just love to know who's attending, and hopefully use some of that information to create content that we all can learn and grow from.
Another quick housekeeping that we ask, if you could please use the Q&A and the chat feature to submit questions, and we'll try to get those questions over to the panelists as best we can. This chat is also open for informal conversations. So yeah, but try to stay on topic, please. And also a friendly reminder that I said a couple of seconds ago, but as people keep coming in, this is a happy hour. So feel free to join with a beer, cocktail, non-alcoholic drink of your choice. We're in Texas. We have ranch water. It's required. So cheers, everybody.
Cheers. So, I'm Jason. I'm here in Austin, Texas. My pronouns are he, him, and his. There will be some interactive activities tonight where we may ask attendees to share something over the mic. So during which you can use the raise your hand feature and we will unmute your mic. So now, without further ado, virtually all the way from Chicago, known as the jewel of the Cumberland Cam, Miss Minnie Pearl Necklace.
Hey y'all,
She's here.
I'm here and I'm queer, get used to it. If you didn't know.
What are you drinking tonight?
Well, I want to be classy because this is like an architecture thing. I want to, this is a formal meeting, right? So I got myself some Pinot Grigio with an ice cube.
Oh, there you go. Cheers.
Class personified.
And I have my
Awesome,
PDA, classy.
I love your Mondrian, what's it, jacket.
Very styling.
Yes.
Montreon, is that the new Star Wars movie or something? I've made that joke 3 times tonight and nobody else heard it. So I'm glad that people are laughing.
Reduce, reuse, recycle jokes.
Drag queens love to recycle. How are y'all doing? You're so quiet, audience. No. I'm a teacher, so I'm always in front of like a silent screen. I'm like, y'all, this means so much to me. What do y'all think? And it's just silence. I'm like, okay, well, next.
Where'd you find this jacket? I'm really loving it.
A friend bought it and it just wasn't a good fit for them. So then I just bought it from them. I mean, it literally came from a friend.
Was that based on your shade that you gave them?
It was what?
What was that shade you gave them so that they released their jacket to you?
Oh, it wasn't for them. No, they looked, I didn't see them in it. They just, it was too short. That was it. Or too long. It was too long. That's what it was. So no shade,
No shade.
Don't wear baggy clothes. I don't know. Or do whatever you want.
There you go.
So do we decide on a drinking word game?
Okay, so I think the drinking word, and we already said it once, so we got to all take a drink together. The word is unmute.
Unmute.
Okay, apparently people have trains going by or like, things happen, technical oh wait, I can't say that here. Technical difficulties. So like, just if someone has to say unmute, just, it's better that way.
So Minnie, this might be a good time that everyone can enter into the chat their drag name and we can read some of those off for everyone.
Oh, I'll read somebody off. All right. No.
The teacher, the library is now open, right?
No, it's closed. Oh wait, are they open right now?
I don't know. Never been.
I don't know. All right, I tried to make a joke. So I have a suggestion. If get creative, like Mies van der Hoe or Frank Lloyd Wrong. All those are funny, right? Get some architect humor in there. But also, if you want some like suggestions, I came up with a formula. Okay, I'm a teacher. We always have those formulas ready. Last name of your favorite pop star in your hometown. Wait, last name of your favorite hold on. Last name of your favorite pop star. What is in? Plus your hometown plus St. James. You always have to end with St. James. There's so many, I don't know why, but drag queens love St. James. There's probably some like very personal story about that, but every drag queen I know is Minnie Pearl Necklace St. James.
Okay.
So get ready. I already see people using my formula.
Malone, Metuchen, St. James. Girl, Lindsay.
I love Page
Malone,
Six is a
Metuchen,
good
St.
one.
James. No. Prince, Lawton, St. James.
Gaga, Peoria.
Okay, I'm just gonna, this is entertaining me. I don't know about y'all, but Gaga, Peoria. I'm saying that so bad. I'm saying it so wrong. Peoria.
It's in Illinois. You should know this.
Do I sound like I'm from Illinois?
Queen
Don't
Dawn,
know where I
Miss
get my accent from.
Queen Dawn.
Parton Lauderdale. That's a good one.
Ooh.
Santiago Caladraga. Oh man, that's a great one.
That is a deep cut architecture drag name.
Yeah,
Queen Dawn Miss St.
impressive.
James. Is that Alexander McQueen? Oh wait, no.
For a long time, I've wanted to be Sister Potato Head.
For now, Mr. Potato
That was
Head
pretty
is
good.
gender neutral.
Queen,
These are
like Freddie
great.
Queen.
We have some creatives in the house. Doing good. Delta T, the engineer queen.
Oh.
I want you to always wear like a bodysuit, like one of those, like, what are those?
Green Man suits?
I don't know, just like an engineering outfit. I want you to always wear that, like Ryan.
Like an engineer, like a train engineer.
Yeah.
Carhartt? Is that what you're thinking?
I don't think that like civil engineers have to wear train engineer suits to work, but I could be wrong.
Why not? Start a trend.
Become the trendsetter.
I wish I could show up in drag at school. The kids would never stop paying attention. They would just be like, I think they would love it, honestly. I think they would love it.
Well, you do drag story hours and stuff, right?
I've done it a few times, and one, oh God, thanks for bringing up things that trigger me. One time I did drag story time, and I was reading that Oscar the Grouch, and at the end there's a monster at the end of the book, and I like made it so suspenseful that this pre-K kid just like jumps up and says, "How dare you!" and hits me, like hits me. I got hate crime by a pre-K. Cancel them. Cancel them.
Love to cancel children.
They've been alive long enough to know. Okay? Cancel them.
Oh, goodness gracious.
So, Miss Minnie, what do you have in store for us this evening?
Oh, you know, just the usual, whatever that is. So I guess, I don't know, I haven't really introduced myself. I'm just kind of that random drag queen that showed up. So I guess I could talk a little bit about myself. I mean, I'm no narcissist or anything. But I do need a spotlight. All right, thank you. Okay. So I'm Minnie Pearl Necklace from Nashville, Tennessee. And, you know, I'm really from Smyrna, Tennessee, but we, you know, all you Austin people, all you Chicago people from, you know, Schaumburg, you know what I'm saying. You always say the closest city because it's just easier. It makes things easier. First of all, Smyrna, Tennessee. People always say Smyrna, which makes it sound like some kind of stain, like the stain of Tennessee, which we know is Laverne. But other than that, if you're from Tennessee, you got that joke. So like 3 people are entertained right now. But also, there's some other really funny names. I was thinking about this. There's some really funny names, cities in Tennessee. So we're gonna play a quick little game while we're all putting our drag names in the chat. I have to keep licking my glove because when you use a smartphone, you have to have some kind of heat. And if you know about gloves, you have to lick them. So, I'm fully vaccinated. If you know, I'm good. I'm safe. I can lick my hands. Okay. All right. So true or false. So there are 4 things I'm going to tell you, 4 names of Tennessee states or Tennessee cities. And one of them is not true. Okay. And I made this up today at the gym. I was doing cardio and I had nothing, you know, I had to forget that I was at the gym. So number 1, Nutbush, Tennessee. Okay. Yeah, this is where we're going. This is the kind of humor that brought you. Nutbush, Tennessee, number 1. So one of these is not true. Nutbush,
Okay.
Tennessee. How many times can I say Nutbush? Number 2, hole in the wall. Like hole in the wall, but it's hole in the wall, Tennessee. Okay. Number 3, Buck Snort, Tennessee.
Buck snort.
Buck Snort, Tennessee. And number 4, Muddy Bank. Why that's so funny? Muddy Bank, Tennessee. Okay. Which of those is not true? Which of those is not a true place?
Nut butt.
Money
Nut-
back.
I don't know. I think Muddy Bank is real.
Oh my God.
No,
Okay.
it just
Nutbush,
sounds
Tennessee,
really
Hole in Wall,
cute.
Tennessee, Buck Snort, or Muddy Bank. Which of those is not a real place? And y'all are Googling. Don't Google. Make it like Siri. Is Nutbush
She is
a
guessing
place?
over the wall.
Siri, don't Google that. This is the work computer.
Siri hates my accent. She never understands me. All right, so the answer is Muddy Bank. Muddy Bank is the one that is not true. But then after I made that up, I made up Muddy Bank. Okay, so it's Mini Pro's fictional world. And then I looked it up just in case, because I was like, maybe this really is a place. And there is like a Muddy Brooks. I'm not kidding. So Tennessee is messed up. Oh my goodness. So, but also at the same time, it's kind of fun. It's where I come from. But anyways, yeah, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. Wow. It took that long to introduce my hometown.
Muddy
So
Brooks
it's a
is
great
Garth Brooks'
time.
drag persona.
Oh, that is so good.
Oh.
What? Muddy
Muddy
Brooks,
Brooks is Garth Brooks'
drag
drag persona.
Wait, what was that? Chris Angel or whatever? What was his he had some other persona.
Yeah.
The Mind Freak.
Chris Gaines. Oh my God. So I loved Garth Brooks. I don't know. I'm not sure if I really agree with his politics though. I heard some things, but he's just such a weirdo. And he was the first country artist to mention that you should love who you want to love in his lyrics. So he actually has like a ally lyric. So I mean that's the best we can get from country music, let's be honest. So we got the one lyric to hold
What
on.
about Dolly?
Huh?
Dolly. We got Dolly.
Oh, yeah. I mean that's a given.
Oh.
I'm talking about men. Ooh. So yeah. He might be problematic, but he's kind of not. That's a start.
The start. We got one.
I haven't even been watching the chat. Madonna, Austin, St. James, beautiful. Minaj meet Miami, St. James. So good. I know a Nicki Minaj. Or
Mickey?
Mirage. It's Nicki Minaj, but I know a Mickey Mirage. She's a queen in Chicago. So yeah, I live in Chicago. I live in Andersonville now. Which is super cute. I love it here. They're filming a movie like in my alleyway right now. And it's not that kind of movie, okay?
Oh,
it's a movie about like the main character's a lesbian and it's like their experience, like Midwestern, a lesbian or something. So it'll be super good. I'm like, they were at the Women and Children bookstore, which is like, women empowerment bookstore. And then they filmed at like the kinky leather shop. So this is going to be real interesting. I don't know what this show is going to be about, but well, what time is it? What are y'all thinking? So I was going to do a trivia game. Apparently I was supposed to do a trivia game. So, I'm not one to have great memory and I want something a little bit more critical thinking, okay? So I was thinking of doing a game of, while everybody's coming in, everybody's getting their drinks, doing like a little Would You Rather game.
all right.
Has anybody ever played Would You Rather?
Yes.
I'm a good boy.
Oh. Well. Oh, where did my Would You Rather go? Okay, so I have some Would You Rather questions, and you can type in the chat, of course. Those who are unmuted, feel free to, speak your truth. So here's the first one, okay? And gosh, I have to look at all these ads. Hold on, there's an ad. All right. It's like when you go look up a recipe, you have to read someone's journal. Okay, first, right.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, does anybody cook? No? Okay. All right, here we go. Here is the first would you rather. Y'all, this is as good as it gets. Okay, I don't know what you were expecting when you came in. I don't know if you haven't had half a bottle of wine like I have, but this is gonna, this is what we're here for. All right, would you rather be covered in fur or covered in scales?
Ooh.
I think this depends largely on if you're part of the Austin group or the Chicago group, because
Or
fur
the
is
bear.
very useful in Chicago. Scales are probably more fitting in Austin, if I'm honest.
Or if you're into bears. Or if you're into
Birds
reptiles.
are much better.
Yeah, people are real like scales. They're a snake.
Fur purr.
Ooh, purr. Okay.
Alrighty in there.
I can attest that some of you here are snakes. So.
Well, I will say that during quarantine, I went from twink to cub. So I can attest.
How long have you had the beard, Minnie?
What?
How long have you had the beard?
I wasn't a very hairy child. And then it just happened one day. It was in college. I think in college is when I decided to just let it go.
So you've always been a drag performer in beard?
Oh, totally. And then I always meet these men and like women, they're all just so confused. And, it doesn't matter who you are. They're just like, and I'm like, I can be your mom or your dad. I mean, right? Versatility.
One that can do both.
Oh my gosh. What did y'all did y'all say your answer? Would you rather be covered in fur or scales?
Me, I would do scales.
Scales.
Do that fish life.
Fur.
I would do fur because I feel like I would have I don't know, I'd look like a Shetland pony or something.
I could say scales. You could call me fish, but more like catfish. So
that's very Tennessee of you.
All right, I got one more, or maybe two more. I don't know how long y'all want to listen to me, but would you rather know the history of every? Oh God, sorry, my mind. You know what? My mind is in the muddy bank. Okay. Would you rather know the history of every object you touched, or able to talk to animals? That might save me a trip to Howard Brown. Let's just say that. I'm there. I'm like there every month.
Talk to animals.
A lot of people are saying, let's talk to animals.
Yeah, I don't think people can handle the anxiety of knowing where everything has been.
You never said which one would save you the trip to Howard Brown.
Yeah.
What did you say?
I said you never said which one would save you the trip to Howard Brown.
Oh, you just have to figure that out. That's critical thinking right there.
It seems pretty unanimous.
Howard Brown for tonight.
Everyone's saying animals. Wow.
Yeah.
Not surprised. All right, let me
so
see.
Minnie, I think that it looks like we're getting close to the time where our panel might want to start, but I think everyone would be very excited to see you perform.
Oh, okay. Well, I could put something together real quick.
Just like casual.
I'll go backstage into my dressing room. It's like the size of a living room. So, I'll have plenty of space to get creative, and I'll be back with something special.
So while Miss Minnie is preparing herself for a performance, we're going to send out some of those demographic questions for everyone to answer. So you'll see those popping up, and they'll be up for a little while, and then we'll move on to the next one. And if we don't get through all of them by the time Minnie is back, we'll continue them during the panel discussion. So you should be seeing them pop up as I speak. Again, these will remain anonymous, and this is really just for organizers here to see who's in attendance and see if we can do better at reaching out and if we can do better programming for you all in the future. Just for those of you out there, these will be released one at a time. So if you've only received the one, then that is perfectly fine.
Is that not just the age question coming up?
Yes.
Okay, so I should end. Sorry guys.
Yeah, you gotta end before the next one starts.
I end it and then go to the next, or what?
Yes.
Okay, gonna end that one.
And also, if you want to give Minnie a tip, their Venmo is in the chat. So if you're able, please show her some love.
I mean, you've seen my wigs, you know. You know,
Lace front only.
You've seen it.
Minnie, do you have a Cash App?
Yeah, it's just my name with the what is that squig, the dollar sign? Yeah.
There you go. You got that, Kate? All right, only 8 more people to vote.
Nobody from the West Coast.
Womp womp.
Wow, wow.
Okay, I'm gonna end that one. Let's just jump down to this guy. Yeah, I'm skipping 3 through 7.
We can also continue these during the panel discussion as well.
Yep.
But we don't want to upstage Miss Minnie.
No. Oh, have you guys been watching Drag Race?
I knew you were going to bring this up.
No spoilers.
Oh, girl, it was Snatch Game. Get on it. Like the one thing I live for like every year.
What are your takeaways?
Well, I don't want to spoil it for you then.
Oh, sorry,
What do you want me to say?
Sorry.
I think someone should have gone home. What?
Oh, go ahead.
I just said I think someone should have gone home, but I won't say who.
Somebody did go home, and I was okay with it.
The allies in the meeting are aware of Drag Race's existence, but perhaps not watching. We encourage you to check it out.
Well, I mean, that's the only thing I've been doing since COVID starts, just rewatching old seasons and paint. So.
Did everyone watch the COVID one though? That was actually very interesting. They showed the whole background of how they're filming it during COVID.
Yeah, that was intense.
It was. So they were super safe. It was interesting to see.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how everybody's coming together for this and working together.
Just an FYI, Bradley caught a little typo in Minnie's chat about her Venmo. So if you were looking to do that, just note that there was an E missing.
Can't be sending tips to Minnie Pearl necklace.
Imposter. Daniel's over there registering it, just in case.
Exactly what I did.
One of my sisters got a Venmo from someone that she didn't know, and she wouldn't give them the money back until they wrote her a haiku.
Wow.
And I used to airdrop photos to people on the train here in Chicago. I feel like it's kind of a similar, like, just sort of like pictures of my dog, just kind of felt like they should see it, so.
Gosh.
My coworker Jesse says I am the airdrop creep. That is correct, yes.
I went on a plane a couple of times.
Oh, so for the Chicago people, you guys might know this, but in Austin, we have a weird rule that says you can only build the gay clubs with wood framing.
That's odd.
Yeah, it's because you find studs every 12 inches.
Oh my God. I was waiting. I knew it was going to be something like that.
He loves that joke. He loves that joke.
Can we kick you out of the Zoom for that?
You gotta go, Joe.
I'll just make you the host. Okay, bye.
They're gay dad jokes.
We're changing the drinking word to mute, and all of us are just going to scream it at you.
I'm fine with that. I'm already done, so.
Get another one.
Yeah, who needs a Rico now?
I know. I feel like I should pace myself though. Like, we're only at 6. So, glad to see Joey's jokes are as good as they were in college. Oh, thanks, Lindsay. You're such a liar.
All right, Mini Pearl's ready for performance.
Pearl of the Cumberland Clam is back.
Are y'all ready?
We are ready for you.
Yeah.
So I need you to use your best announcer voice and say, "The jewel of the Cumberland Clam, mini pearl necklace."
Ladies and gentlemen, the jewel of the Cumberland Clam, mini pearl necklace.
Here's what I think. I think everyone on this planet should be able to hold hands whenever they want to, with whomever they want to. That's why I wrote this song. It hurts my heart and scars my soul if I try to understand why couples who are he and she just openly hold hands. They walk and talk and smile for God and all the world to see. But it's different if that couple's he and he or she and she. For folks like me and others like us in this world, it's not the same. If you're guy and guy or girl and girl, for if we hold hands in public, we know that some will say we're wrong. They say we're different, that we don't belong. But I say, please, let's all hold hands. Yes, hold my hand for all this world to see. Or L or G or B or Q or I or straight or trans, I dream about a better world where all of us can just hold hands.
Woo!
Yay! That was incredible.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I haven't done drag in a while, so I'm out of breath. I don't know if y'all saw me. The backdrop fell, and I caught it.
A true talent.
That's called being professional. Okay, that's your own backdrop. And then you put a wig on without even a mirror in sight.
Nailed it.
All right. Thank y'all so much for all the tips. Oh my gosh. Again, y'all know that these wigs, I need new ones. So thank y'all so much. Whew.
Yeah, thank you so much, Minnie. We put your Venmo in the chat if anyone wants to give a tip, and we'll transition to the design equity panel now. And thank you so much for pumping us up for to start an awesome discussion.
Anytime, let me know.
Thank you, Minnie.
Thank you, Minnie.
Thank you so much, Minnie. That was awesome. I think I put in the chat a couple times. I could hear my fiance both laughing out loud and then hooting and hollering a lot. So Tara, we can hear you.
There she is.
So now we want to ask the panelists to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself. We can start with Frankie.
Wow. Hi, I'm Frankie Reynolds, she, her. I'm the Director of Business Development, Real Estate and Construction at Howard Brown Health. Howard Brown Health is a federally qualified health center in Chicago that historically has served the LGBTQ population. And basically that means that we provide sexually and reproductive health, primary care, behavioral health services, and then wraparound social services for LGBTQ people in Chicago, and we have since like 1974. So super happy to be here.
Sammy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sammy. I am a landscape designer at Marvel Architects in New York City. And I'm also doing my own little research project called Queer Landscapes, which I just won a grant for, and I'm looking forward to working on this year. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Breeze?
Hello, my name is Breeze and my pronouns are they, them, ze, zer. I am a Black, queer, non-binary landscape designer here in Boston working at Sasaki. My work primary focus is addressing like the perceptual and physical interpretations of equitable and justice access to space and challenging oppressive structures in design. And I'm really grateful to be here.
And Austin.
Hi, everybody. Austin Ruiz, he, him. I'm the Communications and Marketing Manager for the Montrose Center. And so the Montrose Center is the LGBTQ center here in Houston. We mainly provide behavioral health services to the community, but we've since grown, and now we provide everything from HIV services to support groups for youth, seniors, and we just opened the first LGBTQ affirming affordable senior living center in the South here in Houston. So.
Awesome, thank y'all for being here. We're gonna start off by asking a question about focused on equity. And so when we talk about an equitable society, we envision one where all people, regardless of their gender, race, sexuality, or disability, have the same access and opportunities to growth, and also that they feel welcomed in all spaces to show up as their authentic selves. Unfortunately, we know our communities and workplaces aren't always those welcoming, equitable spaces. So our question for you all is, has there ever been a time where you've either experienced the challenges of inequity or, on the flip side, a welcoming, equitable space? And would you mind sharing a little bit about your personal experience? And we'll, if Breeze, you want to start us off, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I've experienced both types of spaces, but I would speak to experience in a welcoming a space, particularly in the workplace. About 2 years ago, I accepted my pronouns, and I wanted to share that with all my colleagues, and not really understanding the best way to do that, making it awkward. There was this opportunity for me to informally present anything I wanted to present, and it just so happened I wanted to talk about my pronouns. And I did it in such a way that was very much approachable and friendly, but also got the point across is that this is how I want to be referred to. And it really led to a lot of conversations around equity within the office. There were things we were talking about in the office regarding equity, but this started to put tangible actions behind it in the sense of advocating for people to be able to have their pronouns in their email signature. A very simple thing became like a standard, at least having the option to do that. In addition to that, being addressed by my pronouns in client meetings and folks, standing up for me in the sense of like correcting someone, or even, having the opportunity to work on projects that prioritize LGBTQ identities. And so, those are like some of the top quality experiences I've had so far.
Thank you. Any of the other panelists, if you want to jump in, please do.
Yeah, I'll go. I also have a positive and negative experience. I mean, I'll start with the negative. I was interviewing last year, just kind of testing what was out there. And in my interview, it was earlier on in my transition. I'm still, I don't think you're ever done transitioning in a lot of ways. There's never really a beginning or an end. But I was earlier on in my transition, and I was asked about how I would balance my transition with starting a new job in the interview. And I knew right away it was like inappropriate to even ask that question. It felt like an invasion of privacy, and it seemed like they were making assumptions about the experience of being trans and transitioning. That seemed like it was a negative thing, or that it would take away time from work or something. But needless to say, I didn't get the job, and I didn't really want it anymore at that point. But on the flip side, I just recently got a new position at Marvel, and my experience with them was seamless. There was no, it was almost like they didn't acknowledge that I was trans in a positive way. It was, it seemed like it was natural, like it is. So I've started, and everyone's been affirming to me, and I'm really appreciative of that.
I can go ahead and jump in. So I remember my first job out of college, actually. I had interviewed several times for this position, and obviously they wanted me, I wanted to be there. And when I first started, I noticed that the staff was one, very white, and also very allied. It was very straight, or I guess, however, what term you want to use. I was the only gay person there. And I was also the only minority there as well. So I wasn't really sure how to navigate that space of, well, I've lived my whole life kind of out at this point. Like, do I really want to kind of go back in the closet because I'm at work and I don't really know? And then also kind of being the only minority on the staff. So I had to have a couple of sit-down conversations with, my coworkers, and also with my boss at the time. And they were actually very comfortable conversations. They were very natural. And, at the end of the day, it was just me and my own worry. But, there was no kind of signaling otherwise that I could gather from those first couple of weeks, where I was really able to tell, okay, this is a safe environment for me to present my full authentic self at work in. So it was really kind of challenging navigating those first couple of weeks, but once we had those conversations, everything kind of leveled out and got a little bit better after that.
Cool. I guess I'll round it out. I think that I've had like a immensely privileged experience of working the majority of my professional career at Howard Brown. And so at a space that like not that Howard Brown doesn't have areas of growth, but as a white masculine presenting queer, I think that I work at a space where our Christmas party has a drag performance. I mean, I work at a space where I can walk through in a suit and people are complimenting the aesthetic. And I think that's actually really beautiful and lovely, and being able to see folks in leadership who reflect my identities. My entire kind of career has been a really beautiful process, and it makes me acutely aware of places that aren't like that, which I think is interesting. And I went to this tech conference when we could go to conferences sometime, before last year. And it was, I was dressed up, feeling snazzy. And within the first 15 minutes, I got kicked out of the women's bathroom. And it was one of those moments, I stood my ground. I didn't actually leave. I had to go pee. But someone tried to kick me out of the women's restroom. And it was one of those moments where I was of course, on guard for the rest of the time. And I just made me think about how much energy is expended when you're on guard in a professional setting, and how much that interferes with your ability to kind of learn, or the pathways you can see for yourself. So I just think that there are a lot of aspects of being in a a non-accepting working environment that we think about being bad for the person who's experiencing it, but also as an employee, the rest of that conference ended up kind of being trash for me. There's nothing, I couldn't learn the same way, I couldn't make it through in the same way. And so I just think that those experiences end up being so dynamic in terms of actually interfering with how we can be and contribute to our work. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's a pretty good segue into our second question for the panelists, which is, what are those challenges that we have to overcome to create more equitable environments? You could answer more on an organizational level or more on a personal level, but how do we create environments where everyone feels as if they can be their true authentic self? And you can also share your experience sharing your identity or coming out at work if you'd like. And Breeze, if you wanted to start us out with this one.
Sure. I've always found myself in spaces where I'm the only one, whether that is Black or queer. And so when it comes to those challenges of overcoming and how you create these spaces to be your full self, for me, those challenges are, is a long list of challenges, but for me, most of that is spaces are a lot white dominated for me, and very heteronormative, in the sense of, behavior or cultural nuances. And in some ways, the ideas of being professional in the workplace is oppressive, because it's rooted in so much, I don't know, problematic stuff. I can unpack that, but and it doesn't leave a lot of room for expressing cultural expressions, expressing who you are on an everyday basis in all different types of spaces. And for me, I've experienced where folks have treated me differently based on how I speak, or the fact that I have, the way I wear my hair. And for me, I've taken myself into a place where I don't really, focus on that energy that it takes to really be myself requires me to be focused on myself and to be my full self no matter what. So yeah, so I think the key is to personally to just be yourself, but also, we need more supportive spaces to see everyone as themselves.
Anyone else? Frankie?
Yeah. Thanks, Breeze. I think that was great. We've at Howard Brown, we've had to do some kind of intentional work about unpacking what it means, like what professionalism means, and what that means and how that can be really problematic and oppressive to folks. But I also want to talk about like some of the basics. I think that people sometimes it's really about like, how does your healthcare, is your healthcare inclusive? Like, will your healthcare cover gender affirming surgeries? Will your healthcare cover parental leave for folks that aren't actively giving birth? Like, I think that when we talk about, sometimes people think about like challenges to creating inclusive environments as this like more theoretical thing, but sometimes there are some really pragmatic barriers that can come in where you're like, how is your job description worded in a way that kind of plays on how oppressive professionalism can be. I think that there are things that are very concrete that you can change, where it's like, yes, of course, we all want to feel celebrated and loved at work, and like we can be our true authentic selves, but we also want like our healthcare to cover our needs, and we want to be able to spend time with our children even if we didn't give birth to them, and things that I think are in some ways more concrete. Even having like HR policies that protect people when they vocalize that they have had an issue, and making those policies known. I think that there are you have to like change hearts and minds, and there is some kind of intangibles. There are a lot of intangibles about creating more inclusive spaces, but there are some really tangible things that can have direct impact on teams and people immediately. So
yeah, it's I'm really happy you mentioned healthcare, because literally in the past year I've had this thought in my head a lot, where in New York City, at least, if you're on Medicaid, you can be a trans person and be on a trans-specific healthcare plan, a managed Medicaid plan, and it'll cover basically any gender-affirming procedure, including electrolysis and facial feminization surgery, and the list goes on. And before I was laid off last summer, I was on private insurance, and I had applied for my facial feminization surgery to be medically necessary, but my private insurance didn't consider it medically necessary. They thought it was an aesthetic cosmetic procedure. So while I was employed at a job that I loved at a landscape architecture firm, I was denied healthcare that I felt like was a necessity, even though I was paying exorbitant amounts of premiums so that I could reduce my co-pays every month, but still wouldn't cover like major issues that I had as a trans person. But then when I was laid off, I found out about this healthcare and was almost encouraged to stay out of the workforce, because I could get everything that I needed covered. So anyway, I accepted this new position, and I will have to deal with that going forward, because my trans affirming healthcare will be taken away from me starting next month. So I have to figure that out. But that was something that was kind of a tangent, but I feel like I also wanted to mention that in terms of coming out, I think that's one of our questions coming up, I guess. Like, how does someone come out and be supported and stuff in your office? I ended up just being really blunt with them when I came out about my gender identity, and I ended up saying like, hi, my pronouns are she, her. You may notice some changes. Thank you. Just kind of like bluntly. And I don't think you need to even, you don't need to have like a sit down conversation with every person and like explain everything. I think you can be as brief as you want to be, because it's a lot of work. So anyway, that's what I have to say for now.
I did have a question about something that Breeze and Frankie both mentioned, which is It sounded like a negative connotation of professionalism, and I wonder if either of you would be willing to expound on that.
Yeah, I think, how can the idea of professionalism, I guess, comes from, in the sense of like how it's perpetuated, comes from the understanding that there's a certain way you're supposed to act, and that certain way, that standard is built from, in my opinion, oppressive legacy, in the sense of not being able to be yourself in a workspace. I mean, it's really layered, to be quite honest. But for instance, if someone, and I think there is a fine line. For instance, like, and if you're in an office in a workplace, you're not gonna be like, for instance, sleeping in the workplace. However, like, you should be able, maybe there is a designated place to sleep. So I think for me personally, I want to be able to come to a place, dress the way I want to, my hair the way I want to, and act the way I want to in a very respectful way, and still get my work done. I don't want there to be one way to get work done put on me.
Yeah, I think that oftentimes professionalism is used as like coded language for whiteness. And I think that that's something that isn't always true, but is often true. And I think that that's like where we're talking about, like, are you asking for a respectful work behavior? Or are you asking for something that, like, when you're asking for somebody to wear a certain attire, for their hair to be fixed a certain way, for like their language to be a certain way, and I think that we see this both when we talk about like race and when we talk about class too. I mean, I think that oftentimes when we talk about certain connotations with certain vernacular, whether that's African American vernacular or, just a Southern twang, I think that there's sometimes connotations associated with that where something can be perceived as less professional, but really you're talking about the distance between, it's not about the ability for that thing or that person or what they're doing to do their job well. It's about the ability of that to pass within a world that's like prioritizing and valuing whiteness and like kind of a white Anglo-Saxon kind of take. So as Breeze was saying, like, if you're respectful, if you're getting your work done, that's really the question. That those should be the standards, not if you're adhering to some other kind of standard of what that looks like.
Yeah, that's great. And I think what I've been hearing from y'all too is it's about the policies and the firm culture, but also about everyone's individual responsibility to make sure that both of those things are reflecting equitable and inclusive language and cultures, so that we can all be comfortable and work our best without using our energy to have to overcome these barriers that can really create negative outcomes for not just individuals, but for our companies. And now we want to ask a question about to all the panelists about your work. And so with social equity as the top driver, what efforts are you either personally or through your organization leading? And how are you taking that work to new levels? And then and if you want to respond as well to how social equity has been a focus for some of that work, and whether that came from a top-down or sort of a bottom-up, more grassroots level. So if Austin, you want to start us off?
Sure. So as I mentioned kind of in the introductions, the Montrose Center just recently opened our new senior center. So it's the first LGBTQ affirming affordable senior living center in the South. This really came out of a need because we saw that a lot of our seniors, so we have a neighborhood in Houston that we call Montrose, hence why we're the Montrose Center. And it's been the kind of LGBTQ hub of the city. It's been where all the bars are, where all of like the bookstores used to be back in the day. It's kind of where a lot of the organizing first started, way back in the late 70s and early 80s of Houston. And so it kind of was the gay hub, if you will, for the longest time. And a lot of people chose to live there. As people have gotten older, as the city has developed, a lot of our seniors have been pushed out because of rent, because of new developments, and they aren't able to live close to that neighborhood anymore. Aside from that, a lot of living centers, affordable living facilities for seniors are not LGBTQ affirming. And so our seniors may have to go back into the closet if they choose to live in a typical senior facility to try and get that subsidized rent because they can't afford a place otherwise. So seeing that kind of need, our former mayor, Anise Parker, and kind of other community leaders really kind of got together and thought, well, what can we do to solve this? And so that's where the Law Harrington Senior Living Center really was born out of. It was born out of the recognition of we need somewhere that our seniors can age with dignity, where they can be accepted, but then also where they can offer or they can access other social services that they need. So in the center, there is a health clinic where seniors can go downstairs and they can access medication, they can get wellness checkups. We also have a meals program because we know that 1 out of every 5 LGBTQ people are food insecure. And so this is also trying to be kind of more of a wraparound similar to the Montrose Center, in that we also realize that, seniors are twice as likely to live in social isolation from others. And that, we have a limited capacity for the senior center. So we want to be able to create opportunities for other seniors not living at the center to come have community, enjoy the company of other like-minded LGBTQ individuals, and really kind of make it as the hub for our senior population here in Houston. And so kind of going back a little bit to the second part of that question, it really was a top-down type of thing. Like I said, it came from our former mayor at the time and from our executive director, from other kind of community advocates, community leaders. It really was this effort that really started with those leaders saying, okay, this is the need, what can we do to solve it, and how can we address that?
That's great, thank you. Any of the other panelists, feel free to jump in and share about some of the either personal or organizational work you're doing.
I can go again. So I can't speak too well on Marvel because I just started there, and I know that equity is one of their, part of their mission statement. But I want to actually talk more about my personal goals kind of outside of work. And I mentioned at the beginning in my introduction that I've been doing this queer landscapes project, and it's really a research and writing project, which is trying to identify queer landscape design aesthetics. So it's more of like a survey of projects that have been built, or maybe conceptual projects that apply or include or incorporate queer theory principles, including feminist principles. And the one thing that I'm not doing, however, is really, I guess, proposing any built work or policy changes or anything super concrete, but it is a visibility project. And I guess that is in one way that I'm kind of trying to contribute to equitable design. I think we like to identify queer art and queer architecture even, but landscape has been kind of ignored in that realm. I know that there are other identity-focused organizations like the Black Space Project, and there are other, I think there's like the NOMA, National Organization for Minority Architects. So there are a lot of these organizations, but this is more of a bottom-up approach, I guess, which is like spearheading my own personal project and trying to run with it as far as I can. It started in grad school when I took a queer theory course, and you had to apply queer theory to your profession or your career or your major, because it was for non-queer queer theory majors, I guess. But I applied it to landscape design, and then I had this seed in my head, and then eventually just over the years have kind of grown, and spoke about kind of a little piece about it at the ASLA conference a couple years ago. And now I'm looking forward to fleshing it out to some type of like publication, living, breathing document, maybe online or something. So I still have to really define a lot of its efforts. I just was awarded the grant, so stay tuned for more about that.
Wonderful, thank you. And then wanted to give an opportunity for Breeze or Frankie to share here, or else we'll go on to the next question.
I'll just put like a little plug in. I've been talking a lot, so I'll keep it short. One of the things that Howard Brown's been working really hard on right now is COVID vaccines. If you haven't heard, it's a huge thing that everyone's trying to work really hard on. But we're specifically looking at trying to locate pop-up COVID vaccination centers in neighborhoods that have been hardest hit by COVID. And I think that that's something that is really, when we talk about like health equity, and we talk about, you know, looking at least in Chicago, I'm not super familiar with Austin, but at least in Chicago, there's some massive disparities in terms of where health access is and where people are actually transmitting and dying from COVID. So that's something that we've been really focused on, is trying to make sure that those vaccines aren't just being distributed to folks who have access and have the ability to kind of wheel and deal their way to a vaccination site, and instead, you know, partnering with churches, which isn't always the most, you know, natural partnership between the gays and the church, but sometimes it is, and all types of community centers to get those vaccines in the hands of folks that need them.
Yeah, and I would just share, like, you know, I mentioned earlier that a lot of the work that I do, you know, is in this realm of like interpreting what is perceived as accessible space and what is actually not, or, you know, those types of things. And, you know, as the work that I do is supported by my firm in the sense of really, you know, trying to be within a market that is going after these non-traditional projects that are really trying to, you know, dissect what equity is and what it looks like and how it can manifest as in the planning effort, but also like as a physical environment effort. And so, you know, I've done several projects and working on several projects that explore that from different framework. For instance, I had one, I did a research project a couple of years ago focused in Roxbury, which is a predominantly Black neighborhood in Boston. And you know, the lens of that project was looking at how to create affirming spaces for Black WMAX or and non-binary folks, and really using the infrastructure, the social infrastructure that exists, and threading that within the environment, but also, you know, within the context of economics. You know, how do these people that are artists and organizers start to, you know, one, help lead the community through education and performances and activities, but also how do they sustain themselves as an ecosystem together, and how that is all built around the cultural identity of being Black. So that's just one example of how I've been working with equity.
Awesome. Yeah, and all these efforts and initiatives, if you have more information to share, feel free to put it in the chat too. I know I'd be interested to see more about them, and I'm sure other people would be as well.
Bo, are we taking questions as they come in?
We can. I know we have 2 more questions on our list, but we can throw one in there from the audience.
Okay, have there been any ways that being fully present at your workplace has allowed more lateral or feminist types of leadership, decision-making, or collaboration to flourish at your organization? If yes, can you talk about that experience? This actually kind of dovetails into what my question was going to be about, which was about intersectionality. So I'll kind of broaden this question to say, you know, how important is intersectionality for each of you panelists, and knowing that the LGBTQIA organization is very broad, but often centers on white cis male voices. How do we how important is it to create a more inclusive environment for everybody in this community, and how can that make it better? I have Austin, if you don't mind starting us off.
Yeah, I was just about to unmute myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting in terms of intersectionality and kind of how do you force, you know, cis gay white men to really look inwardly and allow for space for other people, right? I think one of the most interesting things that I've seen actually is Pride Houston here. One of their board members is a queer Black woman. And immediately when she was elected to the board, she started getting more of her friends that looked like her to join the organization as well, to start on different committees. And then those people kind of naturally, you know, as they went on throughout time, they kind of naturally started coming more to leadership positions. And so that really, you know, started at the bottom. It started with the volunteers and what do those look like? And do they look like me? And then, okay, well, let's go ahead and see how we can elevate them so that way they can be the next leaders of the organization. And now a lot of the leaders of Pride Houston are Black queer people, which is kind of amazing because only a few short years ago, it was almost completely cis and white. And even just thinking about other organizations here in Houston and the Montrose Center too, I mean, we really have looked inwardly within the last year at our internal structure, at our hiring policies, at really kind of everything across the board to see what can we do to make our hiring, to make our board recruitment more equitable, and really to find people that don't look like, you know, the current makeup that we have right now on the board. And then I think just even further than that, I mean, and I kind of love telling the story, we also have to listen to our youth. And sometimes I think we kind of write them off as just being like very kind of experimental and kind of figuring out where they fall into the society. But I mean, there was a recent poll that came out that said Gen Z, more than half of them don't agree with the current gender binary of male and female and think that it should be done away with. And I love the story talking about our Hatch Youth program here. To be more inclusive, they have a prom every year. And so, you know, for a while it was a, you know, prom king, prom queen, but as they became more expensive in their own vernacular and their own experiences and their own identities as queer people, you know, they kind of looked at that title and said, well, that doesn't really seem right because that doesn't really affirm myself or the people that look like me. And so they decided to have non-binary monarchs for their prom. And so I think sometimes, you know, the best case that we can, or the best thing that we can do is really kind of look to our youth and kind of take cues from them, because sometimes they're even more progressive than we are really. And so, yeah, that's kind of the things that I've noticed really in the community, just making sure that you are trying as best as possible to center those voices that don't get heard, to really work to be allies to those communities that are most marginalized, even if it does unfortunately mean having to push out kind of those more traditionally centered cis white gay male voices.
Thanks. Anyone else like to share?
I can just add that I think a lot of it has to do with making sure that, like, I don't know, if only gay men, white gay men, have a seat at the table, then like maybe you got to build a new table. And just making sure that folks, like, if there are probably structural issues there that we should look at, and then also, like, you know, it's not just about hiring, you know, one person of color or, like, you know, filling some kind of like diversity quota, but like making sure that as you hire more folks, or training and supporting, you know, that diversity to be able to kind of grow. And sometimes that means that, like, we need to intentionally make space for that, and also foster growth for folks that might not, you know, have the same educational opportunities or fit those other credential like blocks, in making sure that we can like provide that pathway for folks to get a seat at that table, or to build a new table entirely. I think that, like, oftentimes there's this focus on like diversity hiring, but then, like, if the environment you're hiring into is like garbage and not gonna like celebrate them or support them or give them access to healthcare, then that's just setting people up for failure. And so I think that, like, it's all of the above. Like, let's make sure that we're hiring in a diverse pathway, but also making sure that that experience once they're hired is one that's like mutually beneficial and not just like a like parasitic. So that's kind of my take on it.
Just on that note, I kind of want to follow up with that, actually. It's interesting that you mentioned having that kind of inclusive environment, right? Because when I first came to the Montrose Center, there was an experience where just in my position, I make people's business cards. It's really boring. But on our business cards, we have pronouns, right? We have our pronouns that way, you know, as we're giving them to clients or we give them to other people, that's kind of a signal, hey, these are my pronouns. And there were a few people here that refused to put pronouns on their business cards. And when they were, you know, in kind of diversity trainings with the whole staff, they were very hesitant to accept that knowledge and to really kind of internalize that and take that to support other team members. So yeah, I think that that's if not the most important thing, one of the most important things also, and just thinking about all of those things that we talked about, like hiring practices and more equitable, you know, that inclusive environment is so crucial and so key. And it doesn't matter how great of a person that you hire and how stellar that they are, if they're not supported and feel like they can really flourish, they're not going to stick around. So that environment is so important, like you said.
Yeah, I would add to that, Frankie and Austin. You both made great points, which reminds me of like language. A lot of the times when we're talking about creating or, you know, supportive, you know, representation and being understood in a space, when we talk about that space, we talk about it in the sense of allowing or making space. And for me, that notion makes me think that that space belongs to someone in the sense of making space or giving space. And I think, you know, it's important to understand that. And I mean, honestly, we all know that, you know, the space that we're talking about is a white man's space in the sense of historically. And I think one of the key things is understanding ownership of that space, and for there to be true support of that space needs to be given away or not owned, no ownership of that space. And I don't know what that looks like, but I think when it comes to describing that space and our proximity to that space, that language is key to that.
Yeah, I guess I would add that, I guess, and I see a question in the chat that says, I'd like to know more about the tools to build that new table. How can we, or can we all share those tools? I guess I would just say that, that one example or idea that I have is like, Breeze was right. Like a lot of these spaces that exist currently, even if they hire people like us, they are still, you know, largely owned and led by white men, even straight men. And, you know, do I want to work for the leading firms if they're owned and run by straight cis men, white men? So how, it's almost like, yeah, and you can't, within the organization, how do you like, you know, bring new hires in and move them up? It's kind of difficult. It's almost like you're allowing that space, like Breeze was saying. But instead, it would be awesome. You know, we need to start our own firms and initiatives, and we need to be able to have those resources. And I've thought about eventually starting my own practice at some point, but I have over $100,000 in debt from school. I don't have any capital. Like, how do you start a business with someone who has all these barriers already? And I just feel like, I don't know, I don't have the answers, but I would just say that it'd be awesome if it wasn't just allowing space. It was almost like we started our own space. And I know that there are policies in certain cities for public contracts, where you have to hire a certain percentage of the team has to be minority or women-owned businesses, which is a piece of that. But that's already for existing businesses. So I don't know. And of course, there's the whole education pipeline and poverty pipeline and everything. But that's all I really have to say. I just feel like, yeah, I'm with Breeze on this one. Let's stop allowing space and just making our own space.
Yeah, that's great insights. And this goes really well into our last question for y'all. I know we're pushing up on our time, but we'll stay here for an extra 10, 15 minutes for anyone who wants to stay. And so and this is also, Kate asked a similar question where they want to know how can allies support the building of equitable spaces for their queer colleagues. And we recognize that being an ally is the first step. How can allies become accomplices, which is sort of like having an allied premium subscription, and leverage their privilege and to advance equity for both the LGBTQI plus committee and Black, Indigenous, of color communities as well.
I think for me, really, it's more so what allies do whenever we're not around, right? So thinking about, you know, us kind of being in the room and how we're kind of setting the tone for pronoun use or something like that. Like that's all fine and well for their behaviors to kind of meld and kind of pick up with like what we're doing, right? But for me, I think the real work and the real allyship is how are they advocating for the community once nobody from the community is there, and how they're really either sticking up for us or being complicit in the ways in which we're being treated by other allies or by other, you know, heterosexual people from the community. And so that I think is the most important thing for me. And that also kind of has to do with, I think going even a step further, also examining one's own implicit bias, right? Because that also informs how they might act or code switch whenever we are or are not around. And so I think for allies, really advocate for us when we're there, but especially do it when we're not, because if we're not there, who else is going to advocate for us?
Yeah, I agree. And this question is kind of tricky for me because I come at it, although I identify as a Black queer non-binary person, and you know they come together. A lot of the times when I engage this type of question, it's separate in the sense of I have to respond as a queer person, but then also as a Black person separately. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to answer this in a way without it sounding like completely harsh. So one, I agree, Austin, like, you know, it depends on how folks act when we're not there, but also when we are there. I've been in plenty of meetings where folks know my pronouns. Like, if you don't see me and think my pronouns, then I don't know what else. Like, that's just, they come hand in hand. And there have been occasions where folks will, you know, get my pronouns incorrectly and know it because they like pause, but then don't take the time to correct themselves. Like, simple, just, you know, my bad, I messed up, and then correct and just move on. Or even if someone else does it and they don't take the time to stand up for me, and especially when it's something that's a reoccurring type of conversation, and knowing who I am. So that's one. But also, I think this whole idea of, I used to be a person that advocated a lot for, you know, people being allies and accomplices, but over the past year, it seemed like it has actually opened the gates for performative gestures, and it's just like, not, I don't feel it. It's not authentic, and so I challenge that, because a lot of the times folks get that if they're labeling themselves as allies, one, that's wrong. You know, if someone should give you that title, that is a gift. But also, I think we should eradicate the entire title from the very beginning, because it shouldn't have to take you to be an accomplice or ally to do what's right, period.
Thank you, Breeze. I love that. I would just agree and say, well, with a piece of that, from a personal experience, pronouns are a big deal, and it's almost like it's an easy way for people to microaggress against you, and especially if they already know your pronouns and they do it anyway. And I guess one piece that I wanted to add is, and I'm trying to get even my mom to do this, but yeah, but and you know, she'll say something like, well, I had 28 years of calling you one thing, so it'll take me a minute to, it's been 2 years now, and she still will get some of my pronouns wrong. But I'll just correct her, and she'll like almost be offended when I correct her, or she'll be really apologetic, and both are just like making a scene of it all. And all I really want is to just like literally train your muscles in your body to switch, and that's about repetition and about correction, and like the dog with the clicker, like you really just have to like always stay on top of it. And as someone who was transitioning early on, I had a hard time correcting people because I didn't want to step on toes. But in the end, you realize like you really have to correct people, because if you don't, they're just going to keep doing it. So that's all I have to say.
Moms. Ophelia, I saw Breeze nodding too. I think we could all probably share a little bit about our moms and the names they use for us and the pronouns they use for us and things like that. Moms aside, though, I think that, it actually fits into what everyone's been saying, but I think it's really important to, like, when you're about to take an action as like an ally, that you think about if that action is for yourself or for that person. And I think that can be like just a real base level gut check. Like, are you trying to actively earn that? Is that something that person actually wants? Are you actually going to cause, that person or group of people more harm in that action? I think that can be a good gut check. But, throughout this conversation, I think that we also should just think a little bit about like wealth redistribution from like as we're talking, like, and Sammy's talking about wanting to like start, her own practice and the issues with that. And I think that sometimes, you know, we need to think about what it means to be an ally in the way of that, like, why do people not have their own table? Why are spaces, you know, why are the spaces built for like white cis men? And I think that we really got to think about like where the money, who has the money and where the money should go in a lot of different ways. And we could talk, I mean, you know, we could talk for like 4 other panels about this, but I just wanted to put that in that, like, I think that, you know, for those of us with access and finances, sometimes what can be the most powerful thing or the most is to actually, you know, do some wealth distribution and provide resources so folks can build their own tables or do whatever they would want with that, and build their own worlds that, you know, support them and us in kind of beautiful ways, that as an ally we're not going to be able to do. You know, there's nothing that we can do for that. So.
That's great. Yeah, such great and rich conversation here. And yeah, I'm sure some of the other organizers are already thinking of like the discussion for the next panel we're going to do, maybe later this year or next year, because a lot of these conversations, especially like going beyond the performative, if your actions aren't following through with the statements or the marching or the values that you've professed, and then we really need to take that internal, take the time to work on that, and including in our companies, making sure our companies, if they released a statement on inclusivity, well, that's the first step, right? We need to make sure there's follow up and follow through, and it takes work, but we want to make sure that the burden of that work isn't falling on those of us who are already most marginalized in our community. So anyone on here, if you're like me, like a gay white man, or if you're, you know, a bi man or woman, and you have a little bit more of that privilege, we can use it to work with the full spectrum of our communities to really advance these equitable changes. So, were there any other questions from the audience? I know we're a little bit over on time, but if there's 1 or 2 questions from the audience, it'd be great to get those in before we sign off. I know it's getting a little late on the East Coast, so we want to make sure we're respectful of the time. So maybe, you know, just another couple minutes if there's any questions.
I think we can more approve if we collab like this at another event. Would you probably be interested in redoing this again?
Definitely. Always love it when you join us, Kyle.
So yeah, I was thinking about, when do you want to try to collab on this again?
Well, maybe during the summer for a Pride event like we did last year. Sure, we can get something going again.
Yeah. Okay.
I also wanted to mention one of our goals with this event, partnering with Austin and Chicago, was to hopefully cast a wider net for people in the architecture community who are joining, hopefully outside of those 2 cities. And these are the only 2 cities that have the LGBTQIA Alliance so far. And we would love to help other chapters start it in your city, and hoping this can help plant a seed for more alliances.
Awesome, Brad. Well, that's great to hear about AIA Dallas. Definitely happy to share how we got started here. We're an interest group last year, and then became a committee this year. Looks like Lucas just sent in a question. How do we move beyond toxic positivity into true actionable change? The impulse to be positive about one's work with equity is a defense mechanism that tends to dominate these conversations. So how do you help pivot the conversation to action versus self-congratulations? Any tips? I can share just a little bit if any of the other panels want to jump in on that for the some of the changes that are for to try to go beyond the performative. So an example would be like last summer when I was on a TXA Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. That's the Texas State AIA, and some of our members on the committee were encouraging the board to have us write a Black Lives Matter statement, which ended up, falling on us to draft and for them to approve. But in it, we made sure that there were embedded in the statement were action items that we could keep them accountable to over both the short and long term. That included everything from looking at the meritocracy and implicit biases role in the culture of our organization, bringing in implicit bias training for the board in a sustainable every year, and measuring the progress. So that's some making sure that the actions are embedded in the statements. If it's just a statement and there's no way to keep companies, firms, individuals accountable, then we lose those tools.
To add to that, I think I guess this question, I guess I need a little bit more context. For me, if I'm thinking about this in the context of like the profession in general, you kind of think about those tangible actions in a sense of who's in leadership roles, who's getting paid a fair wage, or who's getting those promotions. And in some ways, you really that gut check is if to kind of understand if you are doing something that is performative. Would you basically lay your privilege or your success on the line for someone else's opportunity in some ways, in a sense of, I guess this kind of gets back to that ally or accomplice in some ways. But and I think it's just important just to understand that doing equitable work isn't for self-improvement. Is like I don't know, I can probably explain this a lot better than what I'm saying, but you got to think about it. When I do equitable work, I do it because I understand that things aren't equal because I suffer from different types of levels of oppression, and therefore I'm just trying to get my head above water. And so I want to see other folks do the same, where in some other cases folks haven't had those experiences, so they're doing equitable work because it's interesting, or because they want to look good, or whatever the case might be. So I think it's important for individuals to do individual work to understand their relationship to that, participating in equity work, and understanding that harm, and understanding what types of things they might be perpetuating that aren't clear on the surface. So
I learned a lot just then, but I agree with it because I think those are some of the thoughts in my head, along with just this event in itself, like how you were just mentioning how these groups originated kind of organically in their cities. You guys are coming together on your own. You're organizing this event with people who are doing their own work individually or at organizations. And, you know, I think, I don't want to, this could be an example. I don't know. Yeah. Is this an example of toxic positivity, this event? Is it just being like self-congratulatory or not? I feel like it's not as much, because we're all doing it for our own communities, and we're experiencing our own versions of oppression, and we're all working at trying to literally build it ourselves. Like, this panel came about from the organizers, and it didn't come from like a signaling you know performative thing. It's like, we wanted to do it, we're going to put it together.
Yeah, I think what happens is, so I can have a couple of examples in the sense of like someone all of a sudden becomes the go-to face for talking about equity, but yet they're like not necessarily experiencing anything that's oppressive, you know. And in those cases, they could have gave that platform to someone else, but yet they chose to be the spotlight for whatever reason. I mean, I've seen it a lot in, you know, in landscape architecture, where it's like, well, that could have definitely been, you know, an opportunity could have been given to someone else to speak on that behalf, you know, especially when people claim to be advocates and mentors. It's like, well, be that, you know, step aside. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it does. But you're right. People experience different levels, different types of oppression. And I think that's probably one of the key things to kind of determine whether or not it's performative. It's like, is this oppression directly impacting you? You know, and then therefore you have a stake into it. You have a stake to contribute or do something about it.
Yeah, that's a great perspective to layer on, Breeze. I know that resonated with me. I was, you know, I've organized lots of different events and things, and usually would end up being like on a panel or as a moderator. And last year, it gave me an opportunity to really reflect and say, if I'm not stepping back as well, and not just like putting, you know, you don't always want to center yourself and your opportunity, especially if I know there's this, like for an example is last year, AIA Austin, they were doing a summer conference and they said, hey, can you help us put together a keynote about equity? And so I worked with some people, both people of color and myself, and we were behind the scenes, and we made sure that the platform was focused on conversations from people who could bring these types of conversation. We made sure that they were paid an honorarium too, because we also want to make sure we're not just making people share, and that can be burdensome too. If you're asking people to share their vulnerability and about difficult conversations, but you're expecting them to always do it for free. So I'd also challenge people, if you're in a position of privilege, and even if it hasn't been the norm, make it the new norm for your organization, for your firm, to really show up and support and center voices that aren't usually at the table. So I know we're well over time, and definitely want to thank everybody for being here, the panelists and Minnie Pearl and all the organizers. Thank you so much. If you want to stay engaged, remember to sign up for one of the listservs, and we look forward to hopefully seeing y'all at some of our future events too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.